feeling, a great feeling from Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey in the morning makes me feel alive. Woke me up this morning, now I'm up and on my way. Oh, 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 yeah, what a great way to start your day, the Lakey way.
Well, howdy, how are you? Got to push the right buttons here in the studio. Welcome to the program, everybody. It's Lakey Unleashed in the morning, live on the Twitter feed this morning. Hey, hello, Twitter. How you doing? The X. I'm sorry, we call it X. Sorry, Elon. I promised you I'd call it X, but I didn't. I called it Twitter. But yeah, hello out there. If you're on the follow me at Jimmy Lakey, just my name. All the platforms out there, even Instagram. We haven't hit the Instagram feed yet, but we will soon. And just my name, Jimmy Lakey. If you're on the Facebook now, you know it's a lot of folks watching on Facebook. Facebook Media Equalizer page, Red Wave America, and also my fan page, facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. Wherever you are listening to us this morning, good morning. God bless you. Glad to have you here on the program. And please, my friends, how are you? Everybody's happy? Very happy. Oh, we got a lot of great fun here today on the program. John O'Connor, he was back in the day. He was the attorney for Deep Throat, and he's going to be jumping in here on the in the House of Lakey in just a bit and kind of talk about the Hunter Biden pardon. We'll dive into a little bit of that this morning, and then back from the old radio days. Many of you have requested, and when I got poop canned from the big conglomerate a couple of weeks ago, a lot of you, I said, "Who are your favorite guests?" A lot of you said, "Hey, Jay Ratliff." It had nothing really to do with politics. He was my aviation and travel guy. And Jay's going to hop on here this morning as well. He's going to be on about 45 minutes past the hour. So whatever time zone you're listening in, good morning. Glad to have you. And again, with the power of the inter-Googles and the interweb, we have power to hit on this feed throughout the course, not just live, but replays throughout the day. About 200,000 people. So you're not alone, my friends. You're not alone. Don't forget, on all the platforms, if you're chatting with us, feel free to do so. We always love to hear from you in the chat, and we can pop them right up on the screen like that one. Found you, Mr. Lakey. Greetings from Laramie, Wyoming. I'm at work, so I don't know how long, if I'll be with you a whole cost, but I'll try. So, Scott, howdy ho, my friend. I hope you're doing very well up there in Laramie, Wyoming. Good to have you here. All right, everybody's happy? Good morning. I got a couple of stories that have nothing to do with politics as well. Delilah came in. If old friends of the radio show, you know Delilah's kind of the, I wouldn't say she's the brains behind the operation, but she's not a brain behind any operation. But she helps me out of the Lakey Entertainment Towers, and she came in. She said, "Did you see the business news?" And I said, "What business news are we seeing?" And Delilah said, "Did you see the business news?" The business news is that Chipotle's raising their price 2%. And I said, well, it was already overpriced. Now it's going to be 2% higher than overpriced. But yeah, she was very upset by that, very, very, very bothered by that. And so, anyway, inflation is still there. Joe Biden's economic program is still there. Here's the tough part. Yeah, with inflation, will start coming down, I believe, under President Trump, but new economic plans. But here's the question that's going to have to be asked. How long will it take for those prices? Have we hit a new normal? And will things settle down? I think they'll come down some, but there's going to be some of these new costs that are kind of baked in. And it's going to be interesting to see if they start lowering those costs out there as well. All right, make sure you comment on all the feeds we're on this morning. We got people chiming in this morning for the first time on Twitter. If you're on the Twitter feed, that's my feed, at Jimmy Lakey, JIMMYLAKEY. Follow me there. That's X. I got to stop calling. Is it tough for anybody else to say Twitter or just say X instead of Twitter? The reason I say Twitter is because for years on the broadcast show, I would always say that I'm trying to grow my tweeter. I was trying to grow my tweeter all the time. My tweeter was not needed help. My tweeter needed a lot of big help. And so I didn't have a big tweeter following, and so I would try to do tweeter enhancements. I tried to get my tweeter bigger, and my Twitter was never seeming to grow the way that I wanted my tweeter or my Twitter to grow, and it was always sad to me that it wasn't growing that much. And then all of a sudden, I started talking about growing my X or growing my, and that sounded like a broken relationship, or it just didn't work as well. So I always called it my Twitter. So if you're out there on any platform, give me a follow on the Twitter, my tweeter. I've been trying to grow my tweeter for a long time, and it hasn't worked. What? I'm not trying to be foul or anything. I'm just trying to grow my tweeter. Trying to grow my X. Yeah, it sounds like, yeah. Oh, by the way, it does sound kind of porn side when you say X. Go to X. That's a porn side. By the way, we're also speaking of the opportunities to participate in the program. We're on the Twitter. Yes, we are. We're also on the Patreon, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. There's a paywall there. You got to pay for that. It's $9.95 a month. It's like an OnlyFans for talk show host. Okay. That's what you got to support the talk show host. I don't show my Twitter. I don't show anything, nudity, nothing like that yet. We could arrange that. No, I'm kidding. I'm jesting, but Patreon is like an OnlyFans for content. Musical artists do it, and talk show hosts do it. And if you want to subscribe to the Patreon, there's a 7-day free trial right now. 7 days free, and then if you don't like it, you don't just walk away. But if you do like it, then you going to get some great content. Already some great interviews up there. There's an interview. I want you to encourage you to go back to the interview I did with Naomi Wolf, Dr. Naomi Wolf. It's up there behind the paywall, and she's written a book called The Pfizer Papers, and it's outlines what she calls in the subtitles, Pfizer's Crimes Against Humanity. It's a phenomenal book. And you got it. That interview is up there. It's $9.95 a month, a 7-day free trial. And you can absolutely, positively listen to that behind $9.95. It's patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. I hope you will join me there on the Patreon. That is it's a fun page. I got a lot of content's already gone up this week. I've got some other interviews that are going to go up. And Monday, behind the on the Patreon page, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Malone is the guy that came up with the mRNA technology behind the vaccine. And he's the guy that was horrified that they were using his technology to create a vaccine that we know as the COVID vaccine, which has now been, I think, a lot of folks very happy. I've never known anybody that didn't get the vaccine, didn't get the jab, that says, gosh, I wish I would have gotten it. I do know some people that say they wish they hadn't have gotten it, but I've never met anybody that decided to, what they call pure blood, decided to stay pure blood, regrets going, man, I sure wish I would have gotten the Fauci jab. By the way, there's a rumor going around right now that old Dr. Fauci, you know how old Joe Biden decided to pardon? He decided to give a big pardon to Hunter Biden for all the sins and the crimes that he committed. Well, guess what? Guess what? There's a rumor out there. There's a movie out there that's kind of supporting this out there, that maybe on the final act of office by old Joe Biden, that Joe Biden, what if he gives a blanket immunity, a blanket pardon to Dr. Fauci for any criminality that might have been committed there, any violation? Now, did Fauci commit a crime? I don't know. There's a lot of people think he did. I don't know. I'm not a legal expert, a medical expert, but there's a thought that maybe, just maybe, because you got to remember the American left has worked themselves into a frenzy that they think there's firing squads. They're idiots. They think there's firing squads. There's not. They think that journalists are going to go into encampments. Actually, on our side, we stand for free speech. We like a arraignment of ideas. We like people to we like to have different ideas in the marketplace, if you will. That's why we're so happy that Elon has the old X now. We're very happy that he has that, because we like a free arraignment of ideas and discussion. So, by the way, if you are listening to this program, this podcast, the Lakey Unleashed podcast, and if you disagree with me at any time, feel free, go into the conversation, the comment section of whatever platform you're listening on. And I know Facebook, Twitters, and most of them send right here to the studio. And you can comment there. YouTube as well. Good morning on YouTube. I'd love to get a following built on YouTube. Just look at me. Look at me. Ray says, "Are you getting Twitter pated?" Listen, when you're trying to grow your Twitter all the time, you're trying to grow your Twitter. Sometimes Twitter patient is the only way to. Is the only way to. All right. Obnoxious Scott says his Patreon subscription is in there. He's got the thing done. Thank you very much. I'm glad you subscribed on the Patreon. Appreciate it. Patreon. It's $9.95 a month, and that Dr. Robert Malone interview is going to happen on Monday, and that will be content that will load up next week. So if you're not a subscriber on the Patreon, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, you're going to want to be, because that Dr. Robert Malone interview will be there. And he's, again, the creator of the technology that they used against his wishes to create the Pfizer vaccine. And he's written a book about just the control of government. And I think it's called PsyOps, or I forgot the name of the book. We'll talk about that book. And that's going to be a fun thing to do. All right. It looks like yesterday, Pete Hegseth made headway when it comes to becoming the Secretary of Defense. At least some of the fodder this morning has died down. Yesterday, it was a story all amok that Pete Hegseth was on the outs and he didn't have the votes. And yesterday, I believe it was Joni Ernst from Iowa who's on the committee, and she's kind of a power broker in that whole confirmation. She said, hey, listen, he ought to get a fair hearing, and he should get a fair hearing. There was rumors yesterday that Ron DeSantis had been contacted by the Trump transition team that, would you be interested in stepping in if that Hegseth steps out of that race? But at least of this morning, it seems as if the news is not about Pete Hegseth like it was yesterday. He was the news cycle. And watch how the news cycle switches. Today, the news cycle on the transition is that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are actually heading up to talk to lawmakers about things that they want to get done. If you get a chance, go back and listen to yesterday's conversation I had during the live update, which is free. This will always be free, by the way. The Patreon thing, there's other stuff that won't be free, but this is actually free. Steve Laffey had a good point that even though Vivek and Elon have set kind of a closing of their commission to be on July 4th, 2026. Steve Laffey said what they need to do, the Republicans and the DOGE Committee, Department of Government Fixing of the DOGE, I forgot the acronym for that, but Elon and Vivek are going to be up there. Steve Laffey said yesterday, I thought it was a great point, and it was on the live broadcast yesterday, that what they need to do is come in the first 100 days of the Trump presidency and start proposing some of the obvious things that they should cut and get rid of them, and do it in the first 100 days, because that's when the real momentum of any administration is going to be built, in the first 100 days of administration. I thought that was a very good idea, that even though Elon and Vivek have evidently like a year and a half, almost 2 years to get this done. They really need to get some momentum going now before, while there's, I won't say that Trump's going to have a honeymoon period, but while there's kind of a honeymoon period going on, I think it would be very good for there to be a conversation about, let's really start off some things quickly, and let's just start doing some obvious things and cut those in the first 100 days. Yeah, the DOGE group and that office of government fixing can be that can happen later, and there'll be a lot of other conversation, but start off with some big cuts and just get some momentum going in the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and so January, February, March. I think that's a fantastic idea. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, there's a story yesterday was breaking news, and it's still developing news, that this United Healthcare CEO, evidently, there was a cryptic message, and they think that the assassin might have left bullet casings there. They thought his gun jammed, but now they're thinking the bullet casings. There's a cryptic message. And let me read what the Fox News is up on the head of Fox News right now. I was getting text messages early this morning from a friend of mine on the topic of this assassination of the CEO. They think he left some kind of an assassin on the bullet casings. And this is someone, probably my friend and my source says, they probably are assessing at this point that it had nothing to do with the Department of Justice investigation. See, the very week that the guy gets assassinated from United Health, guess what happens? Here's the headline, MSN.com. Department of Justice launches a probe against United Health for insider trading and attempted to stop a monopoly. And so was it a lot of speculation yesterday early that maybe there was some correlation between United Health and the CEO and this Department of Justice investigation. But my friend, who's analyzing it and kind of following along with what's happened, says he doesn't think that's the case. He thinks this is probably actually a non-professional hit, that someone's family member, maybe a wife or child, died, maybe because they didn't get the coverage that they needed, and just an anger issue with the United Healthcare CEO. So we'll see. They're investigating it, but the guy's still on the loose. Shooter still on the loose there in New York City, and it's a very interesting case. But my friend is speculating, just speculation, but he's a pretty smart fellow, that he's speculating that this is not necessarily tied to the Department of Justice investigation. This could be just somebody that's angry about the policies of and the coverage that United Healthcare gave to their family. All right, speaking of the Department of Justice, I want to switch to a legal topic that we've been talking about here on the Lakey Unleashed podcast. By the way, always comment over here, and you comment on the comment section of any feed you're on. If you're on the Twitter this morning, good morning. If you're on the Rumble, good morning. If you're on any of the numerous Facebook platforms we're on, feel free to jump in there. YouTube as well. I mean, we're on so many live streams. We have access right now to about 200,000 eyeballs that will watch it now or watch it throughout the course of the day. So glad to have you here. But speaking of the Department of Justice, one of my friends' favorites of the program on the old radio show, before iHeart kicked us all to the curb, all the local talk show hosts to the curb, I always like talking to John O'Connor. If you don't remember the name John O'Connor, you should. John O'Connor was the attorney back in the days of the Watergate world and Deep Throat, and he was Deep Throat's attorney. He's the author of a book and the host of a great podcast called Postgate. The author of the book called Postgate, How the Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat, Covered Up Watergate, began today's partisan advocacy journalism. And again, The Mysteries of Watergate is his podcast. And by the way, if you do want to understand how the media ended up the way it is today, you need to read that book, Postgate, by Mr. John O'Connor. He's in the green room right now, and we bring him to the table to talk about Hunter Biden. John O'Connor, good morning, sir. How are you?
Jimmy, I'm great.
Glad to have you here. Thanks for hopping in here on the video feed. You're out in California, so it's a little early for you, but you're a high-powered attorney, so you've probably been up for hours studying briefs and things like that.
Well, that's right. I get up at 2:00 and feed the chickens, and then I start writing briefs.
I'm very proud. You're like a farmer. Farm living's the life for you, John O'Connor. I can see it in you. It looks like you're a farmer. Let's dive into this thing. Hunter Biden, here's my thought. I was not surprised by the pardon of Hunter Biden. I was surprised by the timing of it. I thought that was kind of strange. We can dive deep into it, but give me 35,000 feet, the pardon of Hunter Biden.
Jimmy, he was going to be sentenced December 12th, I think in Delaware, and December 16th in Los Angeles. And those were key dates. Because what happens is in the federal system, the probation office does a tremendously full pre-sentence report. And I think in this case, the pre-sentencing reports would be quite voluminous and extensive. And they cover far more than the crimes at issue. Biden has talked about, it's just tax crimes and it's gun crimes. Well, of course, his tax crimes were pretty egregious. I agree the gun charge is a little bit shaky. But, and normally they wouldn't be brought. But what would have happened in these pre-sentence reports is they would have gotten into a lot of this corruption stuff. Because that's relevant to the judge in sentencing. Is this guy involved? Is this an outgrowth of international corruption, especially the tax issues? And the answer would be yes. This is a guy who's been fooling around with bad guys and structuring payments, including payments to his brother and guess what? His father. So that's a big deal. And I think there was a fear that those pre-sentencing reports would leak. It's not just that he had to go into court to get sentenced, but the pre-sentencing reports would leak. Yes, you have to do that. The other thing, Jimmy, I would note is that this pardon is unusually broad, both as to all crimes and as to the time to which it extends, which is to January 1, 2014. Now, that's 11 years ago. And what are they trying to do? Well, they realize their real vulnerability is all this graft and corruption that is provable, actually 2014, 15, and 16, because you're getting into Ukraine, and then you've got the China connection. I think in those years, you got a lot of payments for this one called the Bohai Harvest Fund that he gets into with Devon Archer in China. And then you have of course, all the Burisma payments in Ukraine. There's also some in Romania. I don't want to bore your audience with all the other stuff he's done, but there's other stuff as well.
So the sentencing was coming up. I had not heard anybody, the analysis saying the time, because I've been trying to figure out the timing. And no, this is the first one. John O'Connor, my guest, author of a book called Postgate. He was in the day Deep Throat's attorney. This is the first person I've heard that's connected that the timing, which I've said since Sunday, was very strange. It had to do with these pre-sentencing hearings that were coming up in just a couple of days. You mentioned that there's a fear that the pre-sentence reports would actually leak. I'm sure those reports are done. Is there any chance that they still leak?
Well, they probably haven't been passed out yet. They may not have gone, and this is probably why Hunter urged it to be done when it was done. It probably had not come out yet. And if it's still within the probation department, what it does is it goes to the judge and it goes to the lawyer involved. And I don't think so. Any leaking would be from the probation department, and these people are pretty straight arrows there, and you're not going to get much from because what they do handle is such dynamite. They have such information, and they do such a good job, and they have federal agents gathering things for them. So this is not a pity-pat operation like you might see in a state court someplace where somebody does a pre-sentence report in half an hour. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to leak. I don't think we're going to find it. And I think what everyone should see is that there's plenty out there that they can find. I would urge people to go to my website, postgatebook.com. And the reason I say that is not to pitch my book, but because I've got a lot of articles in there going back about some of the stuff that Hunter Biden has done. And I think people will understand when you get into there's a guy named Igor Kolomoisky who took billions, I'm not millions, but billions that the United States had to reflate and he took a couple billion from things that the government did, that we did give Ukraine, and the money immediately went into offshore accounts in Cyprus, and he grabbed it. That is Hunter's main client, and nobody talks about Igor Kolomoisky, and nobody talks about the fact that Kolomoisky got his protege elected president of Ukraine. That fellow's name is Zelensky. And you get into then the impeachment of Trump over the Zelensky phone call. The irony of it is Trump was asking Zelensky to investigate corruption, of which Biden was part, but unfortunately, it was also Zelensky's boss.
Wow.
So you can't make this up. But all the tendrils are there. And what I would say is you're not going to get the pre-sentence report. Just go to some of these articles I've written about Ukraine and Hunter Biden. And it's there. You just have to go out and find these little bits and pieces and then put them together in a coherent whole, which our wonderful mainstream media, Jimmy, has not done. Is that, I don't know if that surprises you.
No, it doesn't. Postgatebook.com. If you want to read some of these articles he's talking about, postgatebook.com. Talk about, I guess, Weissman, the special counsel, went to the judge, and the judge issued kind of a statement that begrudgingly, the judge didn't sound all in at this pardon and kicking this out of court, but the judge went along with it. But it sounded like Weissman was not all that happy as well. Kind of talk about that process, because Joe Biden said some pretty nasty things basically about his own Department of Justice in his statement that he issued announcing the pardon of Hunter Biden. What do you think the reaction was in the Department of Justice that for large part has carried the water for the Biden family?
They don't like it. Remember this, it's always been a couple people at the very top, and it's almost a mirror of Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine, you put pressure on the top people, and then everyone else is afraid. And that's what's happened in the Department of Justice. We were treated like a Ukrainian Department of Justice where influence hovered over everyone. I've been in the Justice Department for 6 years, and my friends were in it for longer, and I'm very tied into that community. And people don't like that. The people that work in the Justice Department go to work every day feeling that what they're doing is correct, they're right, their main job is to do the right thing. And now what they are is they're part of a cover-up. And there'd been that feeling for years that the Justice Department, through David Weiss, the special counsel, so-called special counsel, but really the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware mainly, and as well as Maine Justice, and who connects with them. And I think they felt bad. The career prosecutors did not like it. The people who went to Delaware that had to explain to the judge the sweetheart deal to Judge Norilka, they were straight guys. There's a guy named Wise. He's a straight guy, and he doesn't like this at all. And he didn't like it. He was very truthful with the judge, and thank God for him, who then blew up the plea deal, the sweetheart plea deal from months ago. So I had tipped my hat to a guy like Wise and his assistant. I forget his name right now. They're both good guys, and they're not to be trifled with. And no one back there likes this. It exposes the whole thing. It exposes the Justice Department. Now people are going to go out there and they're going to start braying about Kash Patel when we know the Justice Department was corrupted at the top. I hate to say it, not throughout, but corrupted at the top. The FBI performed miserably in Russiagate and then in the Russian collusion disinformation, the Dirty 51 letter. So the whole Justice Department is tarred. They know it, and it just is not a good look. So here you are. They think they had the moral high ground on Trump. They do not have the moral high ground on Trump. Quite the contrary. Now all the Trump people are saying, look what's happening. So it's no wonder that people like Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff and Anthony Fauci are now getting pardons. I wonder why they're getting pardons. Is that some sort of consciousness of guilt? I say it is. When you ask for a pardon, why are you doing this? You know that there's some potential crimes that if the other guys were as bad as they were, that they would be prosecuted. So we're seeing some interesting about faces here, Jimmy.
Help me understand, by the way, John O'Connor, his website is postgatebook.com. A great book. Postgate talks about his days in the Watergate era and how the partisan media kind of developed from that time frame. And he was Deep Throat's attorney back in the day. Postgatebook.com. Talk about those pardons you're talking about, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Dr. Fauci. Is that a fact that they have requested pardons and they're getting? I've been hearing it circulating on the internet. Is that something that is in the works, or is that just something we're hearing in the background?
No, we're just hearing that in the background. And I just assume that if those leaks are coming out, there's probably some substance. So what I'm really saying is we should all look for these things. We'll see who's pardoned, and we'll see who's really sort of admitting guilt. So I'm jumping the gun here a bit in trying to get ahead of the news, Jimmy. So as I always tell you, I want you to be first.
I appreciate it, John O'Connor. Let me ask you this: you explain better than anybody has the timing of this thing, Hunter, because pardons are something controversial ones you do on the very last day as you ride off into the sunset. But it was about this pre-sentencing and the sentencing hearing that was coming up in just a couple of days. That explains the timing, and you are, of course, top on that. I'm first because you were first in explaining that. They should have had on all the networks explaining that because the timing was baffling. Now, there's some speculation that maybe Joe, if he's going to really cover his butt here, he's going to need to pardon his brother, who was a business partner and in all this with Hunter. And you've got these 29 or so LLCs that the Biden family has, Hunter and his brother and his uncle put together, and Joe is taking money as the big guy. You've got grandkids whose names are on the LLC, family members on the LLCs. Is there going to have to be a blanket pardon to all of these people in the Biden family, the Biden crime family, or does the Hunter pardon alone kind of stop all the investigations in its track?
That's a real good question. No, he's going to have to pardon Jim, which will happen in my prediction January 19th. So Jim will be with the last slew of pardons. Most of the pardons will come in a big slew so that you can't concentrate on any one. There will be outrage for a day, but the outrage will be as to 52 pardons. Also, Hunter Biden's partners in crime, like the people who are helping him structure these payments, there's a guy named Schwerin, there's a guy named Rob Walker. There are several people that facilitated all this laundering, took money from China, took money from Ukraine, spread it to the family. I don't think the family members have to be pardoned. They didn't do anything wrong, but all the people in this organization, the guys that were with CEFC, the Chinese outfit, there's a guy named Giliar, but anybody that's associated with this crime group will get pardoned. And so I expect 4, maybe 5 of those guys will get pardoned, which includes the brother Jim. You don't need to get the people who just happen to get checks in their account.
Now, a lot of this happened while Joe Biden was still not the president, so that presidential immunity of any complicity he has, he wasn't performing the office of duties of president because he wasn't the president. Is there any merit? Is Joe Biden in any legal wrangling here? If investigators are upset by this pardon, maybe is Joe an angle to justice?
Well, that's the big question. If I were Joe and advising Joe, I'd say, Joe, make it look like Trump's a terrible person and is going to take retribution at you, but pardon yourself. Because if he doesn't pardon himself, he may well get hit for things that he did between 2016 and 2020. He was taking payments. He was falsely stating he had nothing to do with his son's business, et cetera, et cetera. So now, whether those are crimes, I haven't looked at him, whether he's made a false statement to a government agency or has done anything to obstruct justice. I don't know if he's, but there are things that you can talk about. You can talk about him conspiring with his son in his role as a foreign agent, unregistered. So you might be able to get Joe and then say that while Joe was in office, any crimes had what they call equitable tolling. Tolling is when the statute of limitations doesn't run. And there's a good case that presidents, even when they're not charged, there is equitable tolling because the law does not allow them to be charged. So if you're a president for 4 years, the statute of limitations toll for 4 years. That's what they call an equitable doctrine. It's very loosey-goosey, but lawyers use it sometimes. So if I were Biden, I would watch out that Trump's Justice Department would say, well, there's an equitable tolling at least, even if the statutes have otherwise run. And you may not even need equitable tolling. There may be enough up through 2020, and you got a 6-year statute. So my point is, there's a way that they can get Joe, and if I were Joe, I would pardon himself, and that's going to be a bombshell if he pardons himself.
Well, and to clarify, a president's role of pardon, it's legal. You can pardon your family, you can pardon yourself, you can pardon your dog. There's no reason, there's no way to take this to court and say that's too big of a pardon. A pardon is a pardon from the president.
That's right. It goes back to the royal days. It's an artifact of all the different governments before this. The king can pardon himself. So,
well, one more quick question. John O'Connor, my guest, go to his website, postgatebook.com. He also has a great a podcast called The Mysteries of Watergate. And again, John, if you don't know, his background was a Deep Throat's attorney back in those days. So he knows a lot about Watergate. The Washington Post believe how they betrayed Deep Throat. He's written a book about it called Postgate. Go to postgatebook.com. But a lot of his writings on this stuff and articles and research on this is also at postgatebook.com. Postgatebook.com. The podcast, The Mysteries of Watergate, is available. Real quick, give me your analysis. Kash Patel, appointed by the administration. You got Pam Bondi as the head of the Justice Department as well. Give me your thoughts on these appointments of Pam Bondi, Kash Patel.
Let me do it real quick, Jimmy. I've got a call with a judge here, actually an arbitrator, in about 2 minutes, so I'll make it real quick. Kash Patel is actually he will get a lot of blowback, but he's actually a wonderful pick. Pam Bondi's no problem. She's great. Okay, let's just put that aside. She's excellent, has experience. Kash Patel will get a lot of blowback, but the fact is, when the chips were down, Kash Patel was right on Russiagate and fought Christopher Wray, who claimed that there was nothing to the claim that Russiagate was a farce. He was sticking with the whole Russiagate narrative. Kash Patel said no. He wrote the Nunes memo, which became the subject of Christopher Wray's and the hard left's denunciation. He was right on that. And he was right on the retribution story about the laptop. He was right on that, and he was right on several other issues that other people weren't. So what we want in the FBI is not someone who's a bureaucrat. We want someone who figures out what's true and what's false, and get rid of this politicization. The FBI agents also screwed up the Igor Danchenko trial by being too close to a Russian spy who should be indicted. So he is actually a very good choice. He's going to get a lot of criticism, and he may not make it. Who knows? And I think Trump's got to fight for these folks. Kash Patel is not perfect, but I think actually is much better than he's being portrayed. So.
John O'Connor, I'll let you run off to talk to the judge. I appreciate you, my friend. Postgatebook.com. Postgatebook.com. John O'Connor, a great guy, very smart. Postgatebook.com, and you can read some of the analysis there. That's the first person that I've had give me a good explanation as to the timing of this Hunter Biden pardon. And it has to do with the pre-trial or pre-sentencing reports that were going to be coming out at a sentencing hearing that happens in the next couple of days. John O'Connor, thank you. I cut him off the screen there quickly because he tuned me and said, I got to be quick, Lakey. I got a call with a judge here. So postgatebook.com, postgatebook.com. All right, good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. You're listening to the Lakey Unleashed live daily update. We have a daily update we do Monday through Friday. Glad to have you tuned in. We got people tuning in for the first time on the Twitter feed this morning. And wherever you're at, if you make a comment, you can it'll pop up. We'll get it popped up on the screen if it's a good comment, and it also we see it, and it's a way to interact with the show. Here's one. Can my fellow rumblers do Jimmy a favor? Hit that thumb up button. It helps the stream a lot. Yeah, wherever you're at, be hit the likes and the shares and the hearts and the smiley faces, and even if you hate it, give it a thumbs down. But the interaction, if you ever want to know how to get past the algorithms of these Silicon Valleys, especially the Facebook. You don't just be a passive participant of this podcast on the Facebook. Be a part of it, man. Get out there and and like it, share it, and we see the hearts, we see the thumbs up. And if you're on YouTube this morning, the same thing. YouTube is notorious for wanting to squelch a lot of people that think like us. So please like it, share it out there. Rumble, good morning, glad to have you. And this is the first morning we have been up on the Twitter feed. Glad to have all of you out there on the Twitter watching it and share it. And it'll be live throughout the day, so we got access to throughout the day about 200,000 people out there that could see this podcast. Hello to the Media Equalizer page, the Red Wave America page. Glad to have you here as well, and give it likes and thumbs up and laugh and all that stuff and comments so we can see those here in the broadcast. All right, glad to have you here. I'm fascinated by that conversation with John O'Connor. All week I've been saying, anybody who heard me, I'm like, I don't understand the timing of this thing. I don't understand the timing of this thing. I don't understand the timing of this thing. And now I finally get an explanation. I had people say, well, it's because they're afraid of Kash Patel. It's because, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Kash Patel's not in office. The higher ups are still the higher ups. It's all about the pre-hint. Now I got it. I finally got the, I finally understand it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, let's do this. I want to play this. This was on the Joe Rogan Instagram feed. I thought this was quite funny, and I've seen the cut of Hillary doing it, but it goes. Oh yeah, there. A lot of you chiming in on the interview about with. A lot of you chiming in on the interview with John O'Connor. It's fascinating. He knows his stuff. That's why I wanted to have him on. I was excited when he confirmed because he's on the on the West Coast, and sometimes coming on to me can be a little bit early. Even Patty says, "Got to go," but amazing interview with John O'Connor. Thank you, Patty. Rachel, we just saw that one. Interesting facts about the Biden part, man. That's really fascinating as well. All right, let me do this. I want to play some Joe Rogan stuff here in just a second, just because he's commenting about Hillary Clinton, like sounding crazy MAGA, Make America Great Again, a couple of years ago, and it's amazing how they've changed their tune on this. But I also want to remind you, Tuesday was Giving Tuesday. We're heading towards the holiday season. A lot of you looking for year-end donations, and I just want to tell you, I have a charity organization to give to somebody. I have a great charity organization called Rivers Promise. We work in Africa. That may motivate some of you. That may turn some of you off. I wanted my money to stay in America. Well, God bless you. Give it to organizations that work in America. There's a lot of great ones out there. But we are still in the middle of getting ready for our final push on our Christmas drive, and $35, buys a kid a pair of shoes. And these are kids that wouldn't have shoes. When I first got to this area where we're building our school, Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda, there were kids naked. That's what they say in the South, naked, Nekkid. It's a real word, but naked. We're really changing lives, changing generations. We're doing it through Christian education. We're doing it through just humanitarian work, feeding them. They get meals and 2 meals a day at our school. But we're doing a shoe drive. And a couple of weeks ago, I was in Africa, and I want to show you this little quick video of me going to a Rwandan market. And if you want to donate to the charity, it's riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org. By the way, yesterday's my son's birthday. His name is River. He was adopted from Rwanda when he was first saw a photo of him when he was about 2 years old, and got him in the country in the U.S. And as 3.5, he turned 20 yesterday. But I made a promise that I'd take care of as many of his friends that I couldn't adopt back in the orphanage. And I think I've kept my end of that promise, and I'm still doing it. And it'll be the life's work that will I'll have it. That will be a legacy, hopefully, that lives on once the good Lord's done with me on this planet. Let me play this little video. This is me in the market. This was just a week and a half ago. I was walking in Rwanda. It was crazy. Roll the tape, as they say.
Talking about buying Christmas gifts for kids, and we started early with our fundraising. I'm in an area of Rwanda in Kigali called Nyabagogo. And it is crazy. It's all the taxis, all the markets, everything is here. I'll see if I can show you more. All right, time to go into the market. This should be fun. Gonna do a little bit of Christmas shopping. Not all of it, but just look around for some shoes and some items. Should be fun. I'm walking up a big hill. All right, I made it into the market. Section of children's shoes we'll sort through in the next couple of days. This man wants to be on the camera. There we go. All these are children's shoes. We'll start sorting through them and start getting the right sizes. It's also raining outside, so we could be here for a while. Welcome to Africa. Welcome to Rwanda.
All right, that was just a couple of weeks ago. If you want to give, riverspromise.org, and I know some people are not motivated by certain things. Some people want to give to veterans things or law enforcement charities or foster care. There's so many ways you can give, but be generous this Christmas season, this holiday season. Don't forget your year-end contribution. I was instructed and told that also be very, very aware that, you ready for this, that your donor-directed funds, if you have one of those donor accounts, I think the 10th, I was told, is like the last day to request those funds be sent. And I guess it's because the donor directed accounts, they want you to get that money out before they have time to get it out by the end of the year. So again, just be aware of that. If you're making a year-end donation, listen, the $35 buys a kid a pair of shoes from that market. We're buying also their we're buying not just shoes for kids. We're buying for Christmas gifts. I mean, this is how underprivileged they are, and what a blessing we can be to them. We're actually bringing in. We're actually able to buy feminine products for young ladies. That's a big deal. Thank you, Sheena. She just signed up for a monthly donation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jimmy, and praise Jesus. You can thank me, but give all the praise to Jesus. That's a good idea, Sheena. Don't give me any praise. I'm just doing the Lord's work. That's all I'm doing. All right, let me real quick play this quick edit of a video. This is just a little flashback in time. I hate to do this to you. I know some of you are having breakfast, depending on where you're at, but you're going to hear Hillary Clinton's voice. I apologize. You're going to hear Hillary's voice. I know that kind of upset some of you, but you need to hear it. But at least I'm not playing, again, low budget here. At least I'm not playing these ladies' voices. I'm going to play Hillary instead of these 5 cackling hags. I'm going to just play Hillary. Okay, so yeah. There are people who still watch that show, by the way. This is Joe Rogan. It's from his great podcast. This is Joe Rogan proving that if the Democrats didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. He plays, in her own words, Hillary Clinton sounding more Trumpian than Donald Trump himself. Roll it.
And our law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have
do it
to
again.
fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
You have to wait in line. You have to wait in line. And everybody's more MAGA than Trump.
And then
it's
you couldn't believe that.
Illusion.
Yeah, so I screwed it up there, but that's Hillary. You got to wait in line, and you got to pay back for all the crime. That's fascinating. Being more Trumpian than Donald Trump himself. And again, now they pretend as if Donald J. Trump is the bad guy, and he's racist and bigoted. But it was Hillary who was calling for all that stuff to happen. And by the way, these Democrats they're clutching their pearls about deportation. Remember that it was old Barry Hussein Obama he was known as the deporter in chief. He deported more people than any president recently in our lifetime, even more than Trump did during his first term. So anytime you hear cackling fools like these jackasses, anytime you hear idiots like Hillary or somebody opining for MSNBC regarding their sanctity and how Donald Trump is going to deport these poor little migrants that are here, notice again, it was Hillary Clinton calling for the deportation. It was Hillary Clinton calling for if you get the hell out of our country if you've committed a crime, and wait in line and all that. So again, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all on the old American left. All right, I've explained this entire podcast we're doing this morning. This is the Jimmy Lakey, the Lakey Unleashed free daily update. It's absolutely free. We're doing it, good Lord willing, we'll keep doing it on Monday through Friday, go an hour or so. You know, there's no set clock here. And we do great interviews like we just did with John O'Connor. That was fascinating. But I also got to tell you, there's more content out there. And the only way we make the free stuff work is if you also will participate in what we call the non-free stuff. So let me just throw this up here. It's important that you knew. This is the sponsorship page. It shows you how to do. You go to info@jimmylakey.com, info@jimmylakey.com. info@jimmylakey.com if you want to sponsor anywhere across America. You want to be a sponsor of this program, this free podcast, and the paid podcast. We'll get the word out across America about you and your business, whether you're local, you're regional, or you're national. We can do that. And also, I need the rest of you, if you would, please, a 7-day free trial right now. Go to patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. 7-day free trial, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. No obligation for 7 days, 7 days free trial. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Subscribe, $9.95 a month, and daily, if not every other day, we're putting up great interviews about various topics. Monday, I'll be putting up an interview with Dr. Robert Malone, who created the technology that he was horrified that they used for the MMR for the COVID vaccine. He was horrified they used his technology. So there's a way, if you're a business person or just somebody wants to support us as a sponsor, you can do that. Lots of different programs we're putting together for that. info@jimmylakey.com. And the rest of you, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Subscribe monthly, 7-day free trial available right now. All right. Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have now shown up on Capitol Hill. They're going to be meeting with a lot of our members of Congress to start talking about the government efficiency. They'll be doing that. There's also another podcast that dropped yesterday. I want to show you a quick bit of audio. This is Sabrina Jankowski and me, and it's the Critical Mission podcast. I'll link it out here it's already linked out there. You can find it. But the critical mission has nothing to do with politics. The two most important days of a person's life: the day they're born, the day they figure out why. This is another podcast I'm doing with producer Chad, who's producing this program as well. He's behind the scenes here. But this is Sabrina Jankowski. She stepped into the House of Lakey earlier this week. We put up the podcast. Listen to the story. Her son tragically died because he got something laced with fentanyl, had no clue it had fentanyl in it. And this is about her final night celebrating her son's birthday before she sadly found him dead the next morning. Roll the tape. Sabrina Jankowski, here it is. Our team started because of your son.
Yes, my son, Joseph Jankowski, 24 years old, has passed away from fentanyl. He did not know that what he was buying was fentanyl. When Joey turned 24, we all have that birthday week anymore. It's not just like one day. And towards the later part of the week, he trusted somebody that he had known from elementary who kept hitting him up on Snapchat saying, "Joey, buy from me, buy from me." And this kid had also solicited many other friends of his for quite some time. And I think he just had a weak moment because it was his birthday week, and why not party, right? So in the long run, the kid hit Joey up again. Joey bought from him. I believe that on July 11th, Joey bought from him that evening in a parking lot and came home. Him and I had a great birthday dinner together and said goodnight. He told me how much he loved me and appreciated everything I had done for him. And it was after I walked out of his bedroom saying goodnight for the last time that I ever saw him alive again.
That, my friends, is an interview with Sabrina Jankowski. She came into the House of Lakey this week. And that podcast is up there. It is up there now at the Critical Mission. It's linked on all my fan page. I'll make sure it's out there. We'll put it. Just look up the Critical Mission podcast. Type my name. If you just type in Jimmy Lakey on most of the search platforms, you'll find the Critical Mission podcast. And it's not about politics on that one, but that is a very important one to watch because you need to understand what's happening. They talk about fentanyl overdoses. Most people don't overdose on fentanyl. It's a poisoning. It's sent in here by the commie Chinese. It's coming across our southern border, and Joe Biden has been too worried about whatever he's worried about to stop the flow of fentanyl and criminals into our country from the southern border. And her son was poisoned. It's chemical warfare being waged. When you hear fentanyl in America, that's chemical warfare coming from China, coming across our southern border by the drug cartels. And we've had a weak, decrepit, demented president and an administration that hasn't done a damn thing about it. And I'll go as far to say this. I can't speak for the guest on that podcast, but I'll say that there's a lot of deaths in America, not just Not just murders of people by illegals, but people being murdered literally by poison coming across that southern border. And I'm not the judge of mankind. I'm not the eternal judge, but I'll say there's going to be hell to pay, and there's going to be some accountability. We'll all stand before the good Lord one day, I believe. And I think people like Joe Biden have left that border open. And how many people have died? How many you know the names of the people that have been murdered by illegal aliens. You've got people that have died by fentanyl, and it's all happened because of a demented and president that has done nothing, very little to stand up for America and to close up that southern border. So watch that podcast with Miss Jankowski. It's fantastic. I've heard the story many times, and I was delicate when I was talking to her on that podcast. I wanted to know, she said he went to his bedroom, and that was the last time she saw him. And she actually, and it's the first time I was delicate in asking it, and she opened up the door for me to tell, or for her to tell the story of how she found him the next morning. And it will wake you up. And if you've got kids or grandkids out there, they need to know that sometimes things that they think are just innocent explorations of a pill, or maybe some kid, maybe some college kid out there trying to study for his exams, and somebody offers them an Adderall or something to focus, and they think, oh, it's harmless. If you don't know where it came from and it didn't come from a real pharmacy, you got to be careful, because the Chinese, the commies, have waged chemical warfare against America. They've waged chemical warfare against America. They're smuggling in the chemicals across our southern border. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of that ilk in Washington, D.C. that's been running the thing are letting your kids be attacked by the communist Chinese. You're letting your kids be attacked by this chemical warfare coming across. And it's a very sad, sad, sad day that they're allowing that to happen. Listen, thank God a new sheriff's coming to town, and thank God that the chemical warfare that the commies have been waging against our population, especially our young people, through fentanyl, that chemical warfare is going to stop here real soon. I hope so. All right, John found us. John, welcome to glad to have you. A lot of you are finding it this morning. We're hopping on the Twitter feed this morning. It's our first morning to go live on the X. Glad to have you here. A lot of folks on the Facebook Jimmy Lakey fan page. Glad to have you there. If you're on the YouTubes, hello. If you're on the Rumble, hello. Good. And if you're not on those platforms, or you are but you don't like us, make sure you like this little podcast, and we'll do it live Monday through Friday. And if you want to hear previous episodes, you can do that. Do the previous episodes. We'll wrap up here in just a minute, but again, go to patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Get behind that. That helps. If we got enough subscriber there, that keeps this one free, and it lets us do this. Anybody remember favorite restaurants you ate at as a kid? Chains you remember? I remember growing up in Texas, there was a restaurant called Chi-Chi's, and Chi-Chi's was a Mexican food restaurant. And I remember sometimes we'd all go, the families would get together, the neighborhood would have a little party, or a couple of people go together at Chi-Chi's, and it was Mexican food. And I don't think there's any real I think the chain Chi-Chi's went away. And I remember as a middle school kid that Chi-Chi's, I was told by that, and I don't know if this is true, because I don't talk like this, right? I was told that Chi-Chi's was a slang word for tatas, meaning Hooters. And that's what I was told. It was called Chi-Chi's, and it was about boobs. And I thought, as a 13, 14-year-old boy, going to a restaurant called Boobs or Chi-Chi's is that true? I don't know. I could ask Delilah. Delilah, is Chi-Chi's a slang for boobs? She just looked away and shook her head at me. That's what I was told as a kid, that Chi-Chi's, the Mexican restaurant that was a chain across America, was slang for tatas, his boobs. And so I thought that was great when I was 13, 14. Let's go to Chi-Chi's. Yeah, everybody wanted to go to the Chi-Chi's there, but I just got to the Mexican restaurant at that age. Well, here's some good news here. This is a big news story for you. That Chi-Chi's, after 20 years, the Tex-Mex chain is making a comeback. Perhaps it was launched back in the 70s, became a sensation in the 80s and 90s. That's when I was learning about the Chi-Chi's, with more than 200 locations nationwide. It was a big deal, the Chi-Chi's. And is that true? Somebody out there watching got to be commenting and tell me, is Chi-Chi's really is it really a metaphor or a slang word for boobs? That's what I was told as a kid, so I wanted to go to Chi-Chi's all the time. But then it went through bankruptcy, ownership changes, and the final blow happened in 2003 when they had some bad green onions. It led to the largest hepatitis A breakout in American history. Hundreds of people got sick. 4 people died from the Chi-Chis. And the chain was basically defunct within very few months, all right? Very few months. Well, some salsa products have remained in stores ever since. And up until early this year, there was a single Chi-Chi's that was still open in Vienna, Austria. Randomly, just a Chi-Chi's was open in Austria. Didn't know they had Mexican food there. But anyway, a man named Michael McDermott is an American hero. He's the son of the original owner. His name was Marno McDermott, and he's going to open a new restaurant under the Chi-Chi's name next year. The first location is going to be in Minnesota, which is also the state where the original restaurant opened back in 1976. And it's probably safe to assume that the fried ice cream is going to be back as well. So Chi-Chi's is making a comeback in America. All right, we got to wrap this one up, my friends. Don't forget to make your comments out there. JD says Joe Biden 25th Amendment coming. Would that rescind any and all pardons? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. By the way, if you missed any part of this earlier, you want to make sure you go to the page and listen to it in reverse. Make sure you listen to that. Do I see Joel Gilbert stepped in? Is Joel Gilbert there? Is Joel Gilbert? I think Joel's here. Oh, lady, hold on. We're going to give you bonus money today, my friends. Bonus free podcasting. Joel Gilbert is stepped into the studio. I thought that I had it on my calendar wrong. Am I going live with Joel? I think I'm going live. Joel will go live. Or is he? Okay. Well, Joel Gilbert, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Hi, good to be here. Thank you.
Joel, I thought I did. I had you down on the wrong day. Good to have you here. First of all, give me your take. You had talked about the election a lot in some of your writings and thought that Joe Biden wasn't going to be the candidate, thought that Michelle Obama was going to be. Were you surprised at how this whole thing panned out in the election?
Well, as I did show in my movie, Michelle Obama 2024, I predicted that the Democrats would replace Joe Biden. I thought that Michelle Obama was the natural candidate because she had prepared and positioned herself to be the nominee. She was the most popular Democrat. And I think Obama and Pelosi moved Joe Biden aside, thinking that, well, we've got the convention in 4 weeks in our hometown, Chicago. Michelle's the only one polling ahead of Trump, and that Michelle would be elected in an open convention. And I think what happened is within 30 minutes of Biden dropping out, I think a very bitter Joe Biden, maybe a bitter Jill Biden, outmaneuvered the Obamas with a tweet where they endorsed Kamala Harris. And you saw that Obama and Pelosi held out for about 10 days. They said, no, we want an open convention. And everyone just kind of joined in, and it was too late. So that's what I think went down. And when you saw that when Trump won and went to the White House, no one was happier than Joe Biden. So I think there was kind of a mafia turf war that went down, and the Obamas lost out.
Yeah, they thought they were getting rid of the demented guy, and the old demented Joe Biden ended up outflanking him. I agree with your analysis there. I don't think they wanted Kamala, but they got stuck with Kamala, and because Joe sent out that tweet, and even the Clintons then jumped on with Joe because the Clintons don't like the Obamas, and so you have the Bidens and the Clintons all endorsing Kamala, and I think Obama's like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen like that, and Nancy Pelosi the same way. Joel Gilbert, you're the director of a new documentary called The Climate According to AI Al Gore. If you don't know Joel Gilbert, he's a great guy, documentary filmmaker based in Los Angeles, president of Highway 61 Entertainment, graduate of the London School of Economics, George Washington University, political commentator, foreign policy analyst. And Joel, I want you to talk about, you've got this new documentary, The Climate According to AI Al Gore. There was already been a screening in Australia. There's going to be a DVD and a screening coming up here in just a couple of days here in the USA. Talk about The Climate According to AI Al Gore.
Okay, well, what I did is I know Al Gore because I actually worked for him as a student intern. When I was a student, he was a conservative U.S. senator from Tennessee. I worked in his office, so I got to know him a little bit. But I decided because of the Inflation Reduction Act of Joe Biden was really a $300 billion climate bill, and I saw how worldwide all the governments are, at least in the Western countries, are devoting so much of their budgets and rules to climate change. I decided, let me go back and look where all this really started and where it really came from. And I knew that Al Gore was kind of the godfather of the climate movement. He introduced it back in 1992 with his book called Earth in the Balance. And actually had an Australian politician had contacted me and told me about how Gore based his science on his Harvard professor named Roger Revelle. Gore claimed in this book and also in his 2006 film, An Inconvenient Truth, he spends a lot of time saying, I got this science from my Harvard class when I was there in 1969 for one semester. So I said, let me go look at this and see if this is even real. So I went to the University of California, San Diego, where Roger Revelle's papers are stored. First thing I find is that Gore took a class called Human Populations. It was about the world population explosion. It had nothing to do with climate or atmospheric science whatsoever. Gore gets a C in the class. And I read all of Roger Revelle's papers and interviews for 40 years, and he absolutely did not agree with Al Gore's climate apocalypse that he introduced in this book. Al Gore introduced the idea that there's too much carbon dioxide. The more we put into the atmosphere, the more we're going to be doomed. The oceans are going to flood cities. The ice caps are going to melt because of carbon dioxide. So Roger Revelle was saying the opposite. He said, well, there's a little bit more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but we can't find it because it got absorbed by the plants. It's plant food. It gets absorbed by the oceans. It has no effect whatsoever on the weather. So I realized, well, where did Gore get this stuff from? Because Gore claimed that it was an apocalypse. He talked about how it was a spiritual crisis. So I realized that he probably got it from divinity school. Gore went to divinity school in 1971 at Vanderbilt University to get out of the Vietnam War. And I looked there, and they had these environmental professors that were these wacky radicals. And he also had to read this book called Our Plundered Planet. I read this book. It turns out that Gore basically copied this book and rewrote Our Plundered Planet to write Earth in the Balance. He plagiarized it. And this book was essentially from the 1948. It said, well, the Earth is pristine, it's perfect, and humanity is coming along and ruining it by cutting down trees and using fossil fuels, and we're all going to die because we're going to use too many resources. So Gore, I realized, copied this book, but in 1992, he couldn't come out and say, hey, I got my climate science from this wacky book from the 40s. He lied and said, I got it from Harvard, and no one really looked into it. So I think my film kind of blows the lid off all of climate science, because I show you that the idea that there's too much carbon dioxide was completely made up by Al Gore for political reasons. And in fact, that the whole climate narrative is just the same old scam that has been used by politicians over the years to attack free markets and to get wealth redistribution and centralized government, things that no one would ever vote for.
You're blowing up some research that everybody else has ignored there. Are you getting any kickback? Anybody saying, you're wrong, Joel Gilbert, that the climate science is accurate? Are you getting any kickback? Anybody refuting your research?
Well, not yet. I mean, look, there's trillions of dollars being spent to pay off people to agree. The media, universities, UN scientists are all paid to agree with the climate narrative. And if anyone comes up with something different, they kind of ignore you, or they just consider you to be a heretic, because the whole climate science has taken on characteristics really of a religion. Their philosophy is that we're all original sinners because we turn on the lights or use riding cars. We're sinners, and to gain salvation, you have to engage in sustainability. So if you buy an electric car, you're good. If not, you're bad. You're a heretic. So I'm sure they consider me a heretic for now, but no one has addressed what I have presented, which is solid research to show that the entire premise of Al Gore's climate movement is completely false and made up. Carbon dioxide is not a bad gas. It's not a poison. We produce it every time we exhale. And it's plant food. We get greener deserts, taller plants, and we need more carbon dioxide, not less.
I did an interview yesterday, and it'll be behind the paywall with Gregory Wrightstone with the CO2 Coalition. He says we have the greenest planet we've ever had right now because of CO2, and it's a blessing, not a curse. But again, you're right. The climate religion is out there, and that's how we gain our salvation. Joel Gilbert, if somebody wants to, first of all, see the documentary, I know folks in Australia have already had it. How do they get the DVD? How do they stream it?
Yeah, if you go to climatealgore.com, climatealgore.com, you can watch the movie trailer, and that'll link you up where to buy the DVD or live stream the movie, climatealgore.com.
Somebody just asked the question. Jim just popped up in their chat room and said, will there ever be a complete study or about the carbon offset credits? People pay their carbon offset credits. Maybe Al Gore pushed him. He got rich off those.
Yeah, Gore made a ton of money after he lost to George Bush in 2000, joining the board of Google and Apple and creating all these businesses to take government money to push these climate narratives. And the carbon tax is just another silly one that they've invented to try to convince people that you've got to, move your money elsewhere. That's why when they have these climate conferences, they get these international agreements because they let China, India, and Africa off the hook. And they say, well, Western countries have to send them billions of dollars, and the third world countries agree. They say, sure, we'll sign off. And it's all about redistributing wealth.
The name of the documentary, the DVD, what's the website again?
climatealgore.com. climatealgore.com.
Joel, it's a pleasure, my friend. We'll do it again very soon. climatealgore.com. Get a copy of the DVD, climatealgore.com. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate it. Let's do this. We're running way over time, but I'm going to keep going here. Tevi Troy is an author of a great book, and he has actually got a great bio. And I think we were going to record, but I think we'll just pop on live. It's the same thing. The recording's not any different. Presidential historian. He's a former White House aide, deputy secretary of the HHS. His name is Tevi Troy. The name of his book is called The Power and the Money, The Epic Clashes Between Commanders in Chief and Titans of Industry. Let me hit the right button. Tevi, if you're all right, we're just going to go live here. Why record? Let's just stream to America right now.
Let's do it. I'm ready to go. Thank you.
All right. First of all, your background's phenomenal. Presidential historian, former White House aide. We'll talk about your book and Department of Commerce, Commerce Secretary, etc. But give me your observation. You've watched presidential transitions. You've watched the history of kind of the presidential transition. What are we watching now? We had a historic election, and this transfer of power is about to happen. Give me your historian hat and give me your analysis.
Yeah, rarely do you get second chances in American life, and certainly not in presidential history. But President Trump is getting a second chance, and he seems more ready, more organized, more focused, more determined than he did in the last transition. It seemed in the last transition that they didn't really expect to win. Nobody expected them to win, as you know. And so they had lists ready, they had people ready, and they're moving at a much more focused pace. And I think he has a better understanding of what he wants to accomplish. That said, it's still a Trump administration, and there still are things that happen. Obviously the Matt Gaetz nomination didn't work out. The White House counsel is our nominee is already gone. So, there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be tumult. But as I wrote my last book, Fight House, Trump seems to like it that way. He says, I like conflict. That's a direct quote. And he wants to have his aides kind of hash it out. Whereas Biden didn't want to have any disagreement among his aides. He didn't want to read about any disagreement in the press, and he never fired anybody. And if you don't fire anybody, it can't be that everybody was perfect, because we saw the administration didn't work out so great. So if you don't fire anybody, it shows that people can just get away with stuff.
We saw this election cycle more than ever. Some of the celebrity CEOs, celebrity billionaires and millionaires siding up behind this candidate or that candidate. And your book is actually quite fascinating because it's about the epic clashes between commanders in chief, the president, and the titans of industry. And sometimes they're at odds with each other. Sometimes they're kind of in a partnership, but kind of talk about this, the corporate titans, and really, if a president's going to move his agenda forward, there's some kind of need for the corporate America or the commanders of the industry to be behind him. Help us unpack all that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Corporate America can be hugely helpful to a president. My history goes back 150 years to the days of Rockefeller and JP Morgan. But these corporations, they can provide aid to presidents. They can provide money. Sometimes they can provide actual aids. Henry Luce, when he was time, he provided campaign aids to Dwight Eisenhower. And so they are helpful. But there's a sense of what I call the loneliness of leadership. People at the top, they have no peers in their organizations. And so they see their peers as leaders of other great institutions. So a top CEO and the president will see each other as peers, and they can connect in ways that they can't necessarily connect with their subordinates. This happened with Lyndon Johnson and Lew Wasserman, the great Hollywood mogul. So there's lots of ways in which they can work together. And then today, and you started alluding to this, Jimmy, is Democrats will campaign with all these celebrities like Cardi B, but people like you and me, we don't really know who Cardi B is, right? The celebrities in a disaggregated world of pop culture, they're not really celebrities like when we were growing up. And when we were growing up, everybody watched the same TV shows, everybody knew the same music. That's not the case anymore. But the real celebrities today are the tech CEOs. Elon Musk, everybody knows who he is. And he was a big hit at the Trump rallies. People wanted to see him. And a lot more people know who he is than, let's say, know who Cardi B is. So there's lots of ways CEOs can be helpful.
You hear Jamie Dimon, listen to him on talk shows. He'd release a statement, and it's almost like they sensed that maybe Trump was going to win. They didn't want him to win. It was just funny to watch some of these statements come out. Then you have somebody like a Mark Cuban come out, hitches his his wagon to the horse of the losing candidate, and he's been greatly panned and maybe has tarnished his reputation. So these titans of industry need to be careful who they hitch their wagon to, because let's say Trump lost, there would have been a vendetta against Elon Musk. There already is, but he happened to hitch onto the winning horse.
Yeah, I agree. And I wrote before that I thought it was a risky bet that Musk was taking. If Harris had won, then there was the possibility of selective enforcement by these government regulatory agencies. So it's not always the safest thing to do. But Musk said something very interesting and smart on Saturday Night Live. He said, I reinvented the electric car and I'm sending people to Mars. Did you think I was going to be a normal, chill dude? He takes a different approach to things. He's more impulsive than your average person. He is willing to think outside the box and in ways that are maybe seem to us like risky bets, but to him, they're one of the reasons why he's this 100 billionaire.
Is Trump going to have maybe more success, less success with these titans of industry? One of his big things he likes to deregulate, get rid of some regulation. That seems to be something that corporate America is going to like. But just kind of give me the balance of power. The Democrats always accuse the Republicans of tax cuts and policy that only benefit the richest and the corporations. How do you view that? Are the Democrats right?
Well, first of all, I think that's an old, tired Democratic talking point. And we saw with working class Americans supporting Trump and not going with the Democrat that talking point doesn't work anymore. But the deregulation is an interesting thing, because sometimes you'd think that people in business want fewer regulations. But sometimes the bigger businesses, they like regulations because they're a barrier to entry for smaller, more innovative, more entrepreneurial enterprises. And so it's kind of a real question how the big businesses, and I'm talking about Fortune 50 or Fortune 100 companies, how they will view the deregulatory efforts. It's not a 100% net positive for them.
You've written a book. It's called The Power and the Money. It's the epic clashes between commanders in chief and titans of industry. And you bring something, you talk about LBJ and the titans of industry and who he partnered with. Is you mentioned the Rockefellers, you mentioned JP Morgan, you mentioned all these big names in American history. Is Elon Musk kind of that new name, or one day we're going to see documentaries about Elon Musk and the circle of power and influence that he had in America? Who are the other players of our time?
Oh, absolutely. Elon Musk is up there. He's going to be in the history book. So Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these people, by the way, are covered in The Power and the Money. Bill Gates is a particularly interesting case because he was arrogant and he thought he didn't have to worry about government. He didn't even have a Washington office for years. And he got burned really bad when the Clinton Justice Department came after him strong and hard. And later, years later, when he met Mark Zuckerberg, his first piece of advice to him was get an office there now. And by there, he meant Washington, D.C.
Wow. If folks want to get a copy of the book, I like it because there's a lot of history in it. It goes back because sometimes we think we're living in a totally unique time, and in a sense we are, but history does have a way of repeating itself. And if you understand history and how industry and the presidency all play together, you understand where the power comes from and how the policies are made.
Absolutely. And The Economist just named my book one of the best books of 2024. It's got a lot of great historical lessons, but it also brings us right up to the current day. All those people I mentioned, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and Elon Musk, they're all in the book, and they're all relevant to this larger story about how CEOs have played with presidents.
Wow. What other CEOs right now do you think are going to have the ear of Donald Trump? And we know Elon Musk. We've talked about him often. Gates has oftentimes been on the other side. Zuckerberg has been known for squelching conservative speech and his algorithms. And seemingly, Zuckerberg might have lightened up a little bit, but he's like Elon Musk. He's got a lot of swamp at the Facebook campus, and I'm sure he doesn't know where all the algorithms are at. Who else are I guess the CEOs and the titans of industry that we should be paying attention to that will either be, I guess, on Trump's side or maybe like a Zuckerberg and the Facebook working against the Trump initiatives?
I would keep an eye on Tim Cook. He's not a Republican by any means, but he was willing to directly engage with Trump, and Trump appreciated that in Trump's first term. He said, the reason he's a great CEO is because he calls me. All these other people hire high-priced lobbyists and consultants, but Tim calls me directly, and I think that's an important model, and so I think that is a relationship that will continue. I also think Jamie Dimon is worth watching. He's a very savvy Washington player. When he first started, he used to come to Washington twice a year. Now he comes twice a month. He has strong ties on both sides of the aisle, and he's very careful. He's unlike Musk, who picked one horse. He's careful, and he keeps his ties in both sides.
Is there any CEO that, or a titan of industry, as you'd call it, that you think that the might be have the evil eye from the Trump administration? Say, okay, they're going to probably be working against this new administration because they're hitched to the other horse.
Well, I think Jeff Bezos is someone who has to be careful. I mean, he's got all these businesses, and then he has this tiny business called the Washington Post, which is pretty hysterically anti-Trump. And he put his thumb on the scale and prevented the Washington Post from doing a Kamala Harris endorsement. But that doesn't mean that it's a pro-Trump paper by any means. And I think Bezos is wary that too much anti-Trump coverage will hurt his other businesses.
You had the Republicans for a while threatening Silicon Valley and how they squelch free speech and whether or not they're editorializing. I mean, there's been talk about some kind of a regulation and how the social media platforms are viewed. And then, of course, the titans of industry, if they get too big, they can say, "Hey, you're a monopoly. We're gonna break you up." So I wonder if Bezos is thinking about that with Amazon.
Yeah, and we saw a real anti-monopolistic or antitrust approach in the Biden administration with Lena Khan at the head of the Federal Trade Commission. I don't think that will continue in exactly the same way in the Trump administration, but they are critical of the tech industry, and there are a lot of people in Trump world who take a very skeptical view of these big companies, and they're also willing to do some antitrust action. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Tabby Troy, I appreciate you hopping in here. If folks want a copy of the book, The Power and the Money, folks, you just got to realize power and money go together in Washington, D.C., and it's part of American history, and Tabby Troy gives you a lot of that history. If folks want a copy of the book or to follow you, where do they go?
Well, wherever fine books are sold, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, all great places to get The Power and the Money. My website is tevitroy.org, and you can follow me on Twitter at tevitroy, Tevitroy.
Tabby, I appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on live. We didn't have to record that. We just go live right here and the Lakey Unleashed podcast. Hey, it's bonus time this morning, man. We're rocking and rolling. Glad to have you tuned in. All right, we're going to wrap up here because, we got to, but man, it's booming out there right now. The Twitter feed is live right now. If you follow us on Twitter, I want to thank you and share and like it. This will be populated on the feed. Share it, like it, tag it. My Twitter handle, by the way, is just Jimmy Lakey, JIMMYLAKEY. If you're on any of the Facebook feed, Red Wave America, Media Equalizer, Jimmy Lakey, appreciate you watching there. Rumble is just my name, Jimmy Lakey. YouTube as well, just my name. Now, we do this broadcast free. You hear we got great interviews. If you missed any portion of it, go back and watch that John O'Connor interview that I did this morning. He was Deep Throat's attorney. He's a legal mind like none other. And he really, for the first guy to ever give me a real explanation as to the timing of the pardon that Hunter Biden got. Why did it happen when it happened? And he did that just a moment ago. John O'Connor did. Go back and watch that. But listen, if you want this part to be free, man, I'm glad it can be free. But if you can, help support the free stuff by going and subscribe. We have a subscription model. And it's the Lakey Unleashed podcast. We've got great interviews going up there. For instance, that Tevi Troy interview was supposed to be recorded, but we've gone over time, and I just popped him right into the queue here. It's patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. There's exclusive content that goes up there. It's like the OnlyFans for talk show hosts. It's the OnlyFans for the OnlyFans for talk show hosts, OnlyFans for musicians. And so when you hear somebody say Patreon, it's like our OnlyFans page, but I keep my clothes on for the most part doing it. And you just gotta go subscribe. And I'm asking you to do so. There's a 7-day free trial right now at patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. 7 days. We don't live up to your expectations with giving you exclusive and wonderful content, then you just walk away. That's what you do. But the John O'Connor, you're right, John. The John O'Connor interview was absolutely amazing this morning. You got to go back and watch that. And there's other stuff behind the paywall. There's back there, Jimmy Lakey on Patreon, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. That helps keep this stuff free. And by the way, if you are interested in sponsoring this, you want to advertise with us, and we'll be glad to do that with you. Send us an info note at info@jimmylakey.com. 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 And again, you don't have to, we're based in Colorado, but with the stream and the outreach we're having right now, it's across America, and we can target it to your audience. And if you're local, we'd love to have you. If you can do commerce across America, that's great. But if you're just, let's say you're just a New York audience, we'll push to the New York crowd. We'll make sure that everybody, hey, you in New York that like this broadcast, support this. You in Colorado, support this client. Info@Jimmy Lakey, info@JimmyLakey.com, info@JimmyLakey.com. And if you're not wanting to advertise or market, you can just support us by going to patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. All right, my friends, it's about time to wrap it up. It's been a big one. This is bonus time. We've been going about 50 minutes today. We go an hour and a half. You know why? Because we're just that damn good. That's how good we are. Give it a like, give it a share. Record numbers on the program this morning. Watching it, listening to it. Thank you. And I mean this. info@jimmylakey.com. Support us. We'd love to hear from you, businesses. And patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. We'll do it again tomorrow morning. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for being a part of the broadcast, the podcast, the Critical Mission podcast. Thank you. I appreciate you more than you ever know. May God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.